Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Yandari Chatwin. I oversee communications and community relations for the district. And I want to just share a little bit about logistics and how things are going to run tonight. First, the logistics piece. If you are looking for a restroom, you will exit out that way where there's the green exit sign, and across the hall you'll see some bathrooms. If anyone is looking for translation, si alguien necesita traducción, tenemos audífonos atrás, we have headphones in the back, and we have a Spanish translator here. Tenemos un traductor al español, por si alguien lo necesita. We also have childcare available out in the main cafeteria area, so if any of you see someone coming in later, or you were thinking maybe I'd want to bring my kids and they're coming a little later, we do have that service available tonight. Tonight we're going to hear a presentation from our Director of Boundaries and Planning, Brian Conley. He's going to share a little bit about the process that we're engaged in right now, the Population and Boundary Study, which is looking at 7 schools that are being further studied right now for possible closure, and then looking at the remaining elementary schools for possible boundary realignment, as well as the possibility of some changes to placement of district programs. So we're going to hear a presentation from him, and after that we're going to go into the Q&A portion. If you have questions that you think of while the presentation is happening, you are welcome. There are 2 tables on the back that have note cards and pens to write those down, and we will read those questions and have some answers after Brian's done. I'm going to turn the microphone over to him, and thank you again for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Yandri. Thank you, community members, for being here tonight, and thank you, district leadership, for being here, and board members as well. We appreciate you being here. Yandri and I, or whoever is going to answer questions at the end, will be standing up here, not because we love the limelight, but for the recording, for the streaming services. We need to stay in this area and at least up on this step from what Sam, our tech guru, is telling us from up there. So that's why we're going to be staying right up front for that part, for the streaming side of it. As Yandri told you, my name is Brian Conley, and the first 20-25 minutes here will be an overview of, give us all the same foundational information. Much of it you have already heard if you've been to any of the other meetings, watched board meetings, the like. And it is a great opportunity, as Yandri said, to write down any questions you have as I present, with the cards back there along with pens. If you write them down as we go, then at the end we'll be able to get the right people answering the right questions for you. So, first of all, we started this process just over a year ago, really kicked into high gear in about January or February of the current school year. And since that time, we've been following the process of Policy G5 and the administrative procedures with Policy G5. Our scope of the work that we're doing is really all of Salt Lake City. Our school boundaries are the city of Salt Lake City. So as you can see from this slide right here, we have a very broad responsibility to our students first and foremost, to community members, to taxpayers, to everybody within our Salt Lake City school district limits, which is the city itself. And it's a big responsibility, and it's why we have currently the situation that we have right now is we're trying to get out and really get as many people involved as we can. This meeting, and you'll see toward the end, we also have a few more meetings scheduled for area meetings. I do want to also say, as Yandri said, there are 7 schools that are listed for further study for possible closure. Those 7, Newman, Jackson, Wasatch, Riley, Benyon, Emerson, and Hawthorne. Those are the schools. Of course, whether few of those schools close or many of those schools close, boundaries will also play a role in it. Some of these slides will talk a little bit about boundary adjustments. This is going to, we think, have the potential to impact many people and we're going to try to do that as well as we can, and in the best interest of our students first and our community employees and as well. Here is Salt Lake City School District in the light blue, light gray color there. The number of our residents that are under the age of 18 is shrinking, the percentage of. The only district that has, the only municipality that has a lower percentage of under 18-year-olds is Park City along the Wasatch Frontier. It's us, Park City, and Murray that are really small. The darker colors you see on the others up here, Riverton, South Jordan, West Jordan, Harriman, those others, the darker the color, the higher percentage of students, or excuse me, residents under the age of 18. As a city, we have seen enrollment increase and decline over time. It's been quite a while since we've seen a significant increase like we did back in the 50s. Starting from 1963 through about 1979, in fact, we saw the number of students in Salt Lake City School District almost cut in half during that time. And way over on this end was the number from 2021, and if you watched any of the board meeting last night, or if not, you know that our numbers are just below 20,000 right now for the 23-24 school year. Back when this happened, we closed schools as a district back then. These were schools in that 15-year period that were closed. We know that sometimes one was closed and another school with the same name was opened a mile down the road, a mile away. But between 1964 and 1979, we had 32 schools closed. We did put this other list up here of what's happened since 1982. And since 1982, we've only had 5 schools close. Now, over this time, we have been losing students. We'll get to that to this next slide. But since 2002, from 2002 to 2023, it's a 21-year period with no schools closing. This does feel new for most of us. This does feel like something we haven't dealt with before. And it can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. So we get that. But we've been down this road as a city before. It was just before most of our times. In the numbers that you saw earlier were for K-12. Here you see just the K-6 students, because right now we're focused on elementary schools. And in our K-6 schools, we've seen more than 3,800 fewer students over an 8-year period. During this time, the district has maintained the same number of elementary schools. So 3,800 fewer students, but still the same number of elementary schools. Our population and boundary study aims to focus on these big 3 that you see in front of you. This isn't about closing failing schools. This isn't about, this isn't just driven by financial reasons. It's a factor, but we want to be efficient and effective with taxpayer money. So in that sense, that's how it plays in. But on number 1, we want to maintain and strengthen high-quality learning environments for our students. We want to ensure that every elementary student has that opportunity to learn in an appropriate and engaging setting. And yes, we do want to be responsible with our the tax dollars and the resources that we have allocated to us. But we also want to establish school boundaries that support thriving neighborhood schools and experiences for our student population at each elementary. We want our elementary schools to be what we're calling, and what makes sense is right size, which is really a robust neighborhood population. When we have that, then we have within school choices for students and families. There isn't just one second grade class or one third grade class or one fourth grade class. There's multiple classes, so there are more opportunities to reconfigure how students are served in those grade levels. We want to provide effective collaboration opportunities for teachers. We want special programs to be accessible. In the schools, wherever we have those special programs, have them be where all students have access and opportunity to them. And our district programs aren't in every one of our schools. They are in some, and we'll get to that. We want to minimize split classes. Split classes meaning third, fourth combo class, where third graders and fourth graders are both in there. We do have one school where that is purposefully done at Ensign Elementary with multi-age learning, but teachers have trained and prepared to do it that way. And so that's different than, oh boy, we have too many of this grade and too many of this grade, but we don't have enough to make another class. Let's just combine them into one classroom, the third and fourth graders together. And then, of course, we're trying to be efficient and effective with our resources and taxpayer money. Our previous actions taken were looking at the considerations. These are them alphabetized. When we first took a look at policy G5 administrative procedures, we were looking at all these pieces and really trying to take a holistic look, not just the hard data of how many students are enrolled in a school or how many live in those boundaries, but those other pieces as well that you see up here. Things like community input and we talk to city planners and to people who know our city well about transportation, student safety, pieces like that. So originally, we looked at these pieces right here to get to the study group. Instead of saying we started with all 27 of our elementary schools in Salt Lake District, and we recommended 7 for further study, and those 7 were the 7 I named earlier, and that is where we've been digging in and doing more of the work. The Boundary Options Committee used the considerations to make the recommendations. Again, we looked at the data, but we also looked at that anecdotal and that qualitative data, not just the quantitative. That holistic assessment of schools was saying, let's really look at it, not just for one little aspect of it, but for all those considerations. And some things that really led to a lot of our deeper discussions were things like, we know we have schools in our district where we have community learning centers that serve not just the students in that area, but a lot of community members as well. That played into it. We have quite a few new buildings. We also still have some older facilities. So we looked at those and also the capacity that those buildings had. School enrollment numbers in the neighborhood classes in particular, because district programs can be moved from one spot to another. We really wanted to dig in and learn more about our neighborhood schools and what kind of populations we had there. And we looked at major thoroughfares, for example, that limit movement of students to nearby schools, because we do have some of those in our city. Our approach to further study. We grouped all those considerations you saw earlier, the 16, into 5 primary categories. We're going to get to those. And that's really what's going to guide the development of recommendations to the board. That's what district leadership is doing now, and I'll give you some detail on that with both our data group and our transition group that's looking at that. We looked at the data related to each of the categories, and we're going to evaluate implications of closing the schools. And ultimately, the district is going to take this approach to determine which schools to recommend for closure, this holistic approach. We need to balance needs across the district to best serve our students. This isn't what is just about what's good for one school or one community or one part of town. This is what are we trying to do for the entire district. So those 5 categories that really represent critical principles are student enrollment and residential population within that boundary, proximity and availability of neighborhood schools. We also have building and learning environment quality, a lot to do with the facilities there, where we place our district programs for equitable access, and of course, part of what we're doing tonight, part of what we've been collecting since March has been community input and stakeholder feedback, sometimes at school community council meetings, sometimes at Q&A sessions at those 7 sites, 7 schools, and then these bigger information meetings. There's also, we're going to see in a slide or two, for upcoming board meetings as well, opportunities for public input and comment. So, when we say we're going to look at enrollment data, what does that really mean? Here are some data pieces that we are collecting and looking at right now. Not just the number of resident students and not just the number of students enrolled, but things like the 3-year cohort survival rate for each grade. For example, maybe you have at your school 50 third graders, but of those 50 third graders, only 40 of those 50 move on to the next grade level. The others go somewhere else, to another school, to a charter school, to a private school, homeschool, maybe another school in the area. For whatever reason, the number, you lose some of them, then that we take those averages, that's part of that cohort survival rate. Are you keeping the students that you have? Are you losing students? And we're looking at it grade by grade. That's an example there. Student safety issues, transportation issues, geographical features all fall under proximity and availability of neighborhood schools. We always, as we're doing this, want to consider, at least put into this consideration and say, how can we do this best? We can't eliminate every single piece of it, but how do we reduce the number of students who must cross major thoroughfares in walking to and from school? We all know, having been the principal about a decade ago here at Northwest, I know how much Redwood Road plays into that major thoroughfare piece of, and what kind of impact that can have on students and getting students to school safely. Transportation was another one on there, so we've been meeting with transportation and city planners and crossing guards and UDOT and different entities that are helping us with that piece, as well as our own transportation department. And there are geographical features that we're going to, that we're digging into and collecting data on. Our category 2 continues with things like environmental factors and community and neighborhood identity. We know that people, for the most part, desire walkable alternatives for students and families, and to the extent possible, we want to support that in neighborhood schools and neighborhood identity along with that sense of community. So we know that if the number of if there's fewer schools, we know that that not only says, okay, that community is going to shift and change, but what are the opportunities we can bring with that? And with those opportunities, what are some opportunities after that changeover? Can we help families, students in particular, see that obstacle as an opportunity for something that gives them better access and more, and some equity issues can be also addressed to try to get the right things in the right places and the right schools with the right number of neighborhood students. Category 3, here's some of the factors that we're digging into, or not some of them, the factors we're digging into. Remaining useful life of the buildings, our projections. Things like, I get a question on this down here sometimes, what's becoming a hub school? A hub school, we have some of our schools in the district that have classes specially designed for our students with special needs, with special education students. And those students go to that hub school to receive those services. We have ELP programs at some schools. We have dual language immersion programs at some schools. So I just wanted to explain the hub school piece because that is something different than the others with things like inclusion model and team teaching in classrooms with teachers that looks a little bit different than some of the other district programs. We have more of category 3 here. We're looking at all those things. It doesn't mean that any one of those factors, the ones you've seen before, the ones you're seeing right now, no one of these factors is going to be the reason that a school is recommended for closure or not recommended for closure. It's that holistic approach of weighing all this in. Category 4 includes things like those special programs that I talked a little bit on the other one, the hub and the others. Extended learning program is like gifted and talented. And we talked some about that already. Also, we're looking at the availability of quality learning spaces for not only all of our neighborhood students, but also for our programs in the setting, and if that can happen in alternative settings as well. And this piece is an example of our community input and stakeholder feedback. As parents share support for their local school or concerns about it closing, we are applying their cares and concerns as applicable to all schools on the list for further study. In this way, we balance the feedback we are receiving regarding one school to apply to all schools, even those where parents have not been able to voice their concerns at board meetings or in other planned meetings. We're trying evening meetings. Here we are on a Wednesday night. We're trying a Saturday meeting in the morning. We've tried different evenings other than just Wednesday. We understand busy schedules. Not everyone can be there. This whole process is not about which person in a community or people in a community can yell the loudest. That's not part of the consideration. It's the substance of what they're saying. And oftentimes what we hear from people is like, oh yeah, that's a good point for this school, but that also applies to that school and that school. So we'll include that in our considerations as well. So our approach to boundary adjustments. Boundary adjustments are different, obviously, than school closures. If boundary adjustments look different if we close 7 schools, if the board says, yep, let's do 7, versus if the board says, let's do 2 or 4 or any other number of schools, obviously, the more schools that close, the more boundary adjustments that we would have. These are considerations regarding boundary changes that we're looking at. Impact on enrollment, on, of course, our facilities and what they can handle, our demographics, again, stakeholder input, not just if you're a parent of a school that's closing, but if you're a business owner in that area, if you're a parent of a school where the boundary might be changing, if you're a teacher at a school where a boundary might be changing, all of that is stakeholder input. Student safety and transportation will also be considered. We also have these pieces that we're looking at when we're looking at possible boundary changes. And they look very similar to what you've already seen on the others. So they are part of the consideration as we go forward and look at this. Let's see here. Okay, I got another slide here coming up. I'll talk a little more. Our next steps for further study. The work that we're immersed in right now really falls into the work that's being done by our data group and our transition group. And they're not committees, they are groups that when we need to talk to certain people that have some expertise about certain aspects of this, then we go talk to them and have those meetings and get some information down. For example, when we're talking about and want to get more in depth about one of our schools that is on the further study list, that's a dual language immersion school. When we hear about that, then of course we want to involve people at the district level that are involved with teaching and learning, that department, because they have a lot to say and they know a lot about dual language immersion and that piece of it. Or our Magnet Gifted and Talented program, our ELP program. That would be something that involves them. We're involving student services at times. Sometimes it's really deep conversation with our transportation department or our information systems department. That depends on where it is. The transition group, to me, is going to be the one that really takes center stage and is really the one that, again, turns what many are looking at and going, oh no, we're talking about possible school closures, turns it into some opportunity when we start talking about how do we effectively transition and make this transition for the good of students. We got to always keep in mind that the work that we do, if we can build more robust neighborhood populations, that's an opportunity to serve students better. It's an opportunity to serve all students better. And because the vast majority of our students are neighborhood population students. They're not coming to your school because of a special program near as often as they're coming to your school because it's their neighborhood school. That's the reason why most are. So how do we transition that well? How do we integrate new students into a school and not just try to assimilate them? If a school gains 100 new students from redrawing some boundaries, how do we really value and take what they bring and also bring that into the school to help make the school build a stronger new community instead of just whatever it's been for the last 21 years, the last time we closed schools. We encourage you to not only write questions down so we can go through them tonight, and we have some different experts with us tonight, so that when I say experts education, are education smart people who know more in depth when you start asking questions about the financial end of it, or you start asking questions about the HR end of it. We've got some people here that can answer those. But we also encourage you to keep going to our district website. The page on the left is what our district website looks like, and when you click that red button that says learn more about this process, it pulls up what you see on the right. And there is a button there that says leave us your questions and comments. I highlighted a different area this time because we've been updating and adding more information that some people really have appreciated being able to dig into and look at more. And that is what's under the district data here, for example, district maps. The screenshot that I'm about to share with you isn't interactive because it's part of the PowerPoint, but when you go to it on your own computer, it will be interactive. It is interactive. I know that looks really busy, but the cool thing about this is you can zoom in just on your school and your school's boundaries. And you can start to see things like, oh, here I am. I'm a parent at Newman Elementary, and not only does it show me a mile right here, a 1 mile radius of about what we think, and it's about where we'd say students are usually walking within that range, but it shows overlap with other schools around. It also shows how many students live in that area, and you can say, hey, yeah, it feels like we have a lot of students, but this gets us more hard numbers here. And the information that's on there right now is the October 2022. That's when we do our official counts, or October. We just got done with the official counts for the new October. When I say we, it was really Information Systems and Sam. But we'll be updating this with the current numbers for this year here in the next week or two, so you'll be able to zoom in and see more of this as well. Sam, would you say that's accurate in the next week or two? He's giving me thumbs up, good. All right, so look at that map, look at the other pieces that are gonna be on there as far as some material. Also, if through the course of this, you have neighbors that haven't heard any of this, please encourage them to come to one of the remaining 2 meetings that are area information meetings. We've got these, and these are also on our website. We also have coming up our timeline. That's the first half, what we did from July of 2022 until now. But I want to get to the second page, which shows you that there is going to be public comment for the board that you can participate in. I need to change, I think just yesterday. We're not sure of this East High location yet. We are going to be here at Glendale on that date. No, not on Glendale either. Those two locations just found out a couple hours ago may be changing. We are going to be doing the public hearing at West High, right? Yes, public hearing at West High. Those two may change, but we will update that information, and that'll also be available on our website. The important thing is the dates. Tuesday, November 7th, Monday, November 20th is a time if you'd like to come for public comment, and a public hearing on December 5th. The whole idea is that after this, the board will be making a final decision in early January on this, after hearing this. And now we're going to get Yandere rounding up some of the questions. If you have questions, we're going to take just a few minutes right now. If you have some questions, we're going to collect those questions. And the reason we're going to do that in part is some of you have the same type of questions, and we're going to group them together. The other part is it also gives Yandere a chance to direct the right question to the right people. If it's a teaching and learning question, luckily we have Dr. Tiffany Hall here to talk about some of that. Or we have the legal end of things. Christina Kindle, who's just a whiz with all that, is going to love talking to you there too. So while you're getting those turned in and we start collecting them, then we'll start firing off questions. Thank you.
There is a green basket in the back, and I cannot see where Jason is. Jason, okay. Jason's probably the tallest person in this room. You cannot miss him. Jason is helping me walk around and collect questions. Also, if you just want to walk back to that table and put your question in the basket, that is great as well. And while we're waiting for some of those questions to get put into the basket, I want to make sure I introduce our district leaders who are here today who are going to help answer these questions. Brian introduced a couple of them, but I'll just go here from my left to my right. We have Dr. Tiffany Hall, who is our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. Her department oversees anything related to teaching and learning, so curriculums and developing professional development for our teachers. We have Dr. Sandra Buendia, who is over educational equity and student support. We have Logan Hall over human resource services. Christina Kindle, who is our general counsel. We have our business administrator, Alan Kearsley, who is the guy who oversees all the money things. We have Dr. Lisan Taylor over school leadership and performance. He supervises our school administrators and school leaders. And we also have Isaac Astle over auxiliary services, which includes anything from buildings, grounds, facilities. His department's leading out on our sustainability work and has been really crucial in this further study period that we've been engaging in. If you have additional questions, feel free to keep filling them out as we're answering questions, and we'll leave the basket up. Yeah, we'll leave the basket up here. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, awesome! Someone came prepared. Thank you. And I just want to say again how glad we are you're here. We know this late hour on a Wednesday night is often tough for working families, so thanks for being with us. So we'll start out with this card. When will the new enrollment report be reported online? I think that was the question that Sam answered earlier, right? In the next day or two?
It'll be in the next 1 to 2 weeks. Will be
week.
He just gave the big numbers to our board so you could watch last night's board meeting for that presentation. But as far as getting more granular, saying, hey, in this neighborhood right here, we have 22 students. In this neighborhood, we have 18.
Okay, thank you.
Those smaller numbers are in a week or two.
Perfect. So for those who aren't familiar, in the state, on any given day, you could have a different number of students enrolled in a school as people move in, move out, change neighborhoods. And in Utah, on October 1st is when the state has told everyone that that's our count. So October 1st just passed. That's our count for the whole year, and we'll have those numbers soon. Okay, the next question. Are board members getting up-to-date community comments because what appears online is from early September? Yes, they are. So there is a process that's probably a little slower to get comments up on the district website, but our board members are getting regular updates. They have printed copies to make sure that we don't miss a single one, and even the comment cards that we're gathering here today, we'll have those questions up on our website as well. So thank you for that question. The next question, how will the 5 categories be weighed equally? Will that data be made public? I'm going to turn to the team for help with this question and invite whoever helps me answer to come up here. I've been told by Sam Quantz, our IT expert, that we need to stand within the window of the white box here in order to be seen on the YouTube stream. So, turning to Brian.
So those 5 areas that we're digging in deeper, they are all part of the deeper study and considerations. We're really looking at that holistic approach that I tried to describe earlier of what may weigh more heavily at one school might not weigh as heavily at another school. There might be one school that it's, hey, we have a great school. It's just been built in the last 25, 30 years. It's our neighborhood enrollment size that's probably lower than a lot of other people's. And we're going to have a deeper discussion about that. Try to dig into that enrollment information more. We're not going to worry as much about the building itself on that particular school because that other category of student enrollment might be a bigger issue. Does that mean that school that's going to be the one topic or one reason that it either stays open or closes, or the recommendation is made to stay open or close? No. We're still looking at those other pieces, but they're not all going to weigh exactly the same because our schools are more complex and there's more layers than it's not just a yes or no answer on so many of these. There is some hard data, and some hard data that we look at are things like our enrollment trends, our cohort rates, things like that. That is hard data, but we also have other pieces that we're looking at that just can't be weighed that easily with what's going on, including just some of that community input piece, buildings, the facilities. Are they all ADA compliant? Yes, but only if they were grandfathered. Some of them were grandfathered in to be ADA compliant. If we had to try to make them ADA compliant right now for 2023, what would that look like? So there's different pieces like that that will weigh more heavily at some sites than at others.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else on the team want to add anything? No. Okay. All right. Our next question, I'm going to ask Isaac Astle for some help with this one. This question says, it shows that our house, so this person was looking at the 1 mile radius map that Brian showed all of us, and it says, it shows that our house is within the 1 mile boundary of both Ensign and Washington elementaries. And this family, their children attend Wasatch. However, when we use Google Maps to route a walking path, Ensign is 1.2 miles and Washington is 1.4 miles. Our question is, would the school district consider my house within 1 mile for both these schools and not factor in the actual walking distance? This seems ridiculous as the maps are bird's eye views of the city and do not consider street crossings, sidewalks, or natural geographical features like City Creek Canyon. And I'm going to ask for Isaac's help to first kind of explain the distances in determining walking for students, and then let you take it from there.
Okay. So the state says anything under 1.5 miles is considered a walking distance for a elementary school, and it's up to 2 miles for a secondary school. That's not by as the crow flies. That's through a path, the shortest path from your home or the street that you're on to the property. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's to the front door of the school. It may be to the corner of the property. But that's the way that the state looks at, is this a refundable option if busing was offered. So the 1.5 miles is the limit for the one, and the 2 is the other, and it's it's not as the crow flies. It's by the easiest path for the bus.
Thank you. And I want to add two things. One, the public comment form that Brian mentioned and the comments that you're filling out today are really important because information like that this family is telling us that, look, the distance shows this, but these are some of the obstacles in the path. That information is helping us to make better decisions about these safe walking routes, and we absolutely are going to prioritize those. I also wanted to add that that map is just a tool to help us start visualizing what the district looks like, what the distribution of our student population looks like, but it's not the only data set that we're examining. So just know that that's one of several tools that we're looking at, and thank you for the really great question. This question is, will every attempt be made to place career, classified, and certified personnel? So I'll break down career, classified, certified. These are different categories of employees. And I'm definitely going to turn to our Human Resource Services Director, Logan Hall, to help with this question. Thank you.
The short and easy answer is yes. It's my job to make sure that we're taking care of our employees and going to do everything possible to place and make transfers available for all of our employees of any school that might be potentially closed. Actually developing plans at the moment, contingency plans. If this happens, what would we do in this situation? How would we go about making any kind of reassignments, both with our supervisors in each of the different departments, but also with our employee associations as well. So yes, we will make every single option available and do everything that we possibly can to save as many positions because we value our employees very, very much. They're our greatest resource to be able to serve all of the students in the city.
Thank you. The next question, will new alternative boundaries in different closure scenarios be made public or available to the board prior to a closure vote? How can we understand which closures make most sense if we don't know where students would be relocated in each scenario? Yeah, I can do that. And then if anyone else from the team wants to add anything. So this is a great question. When a recommendation comes to the Board of Education, they will hear potential school closures. They will hear information on the district's recommendation for boundary realignments. They will also hear recommendations possibly on placement of district programs, and it'll be a comprehensive plan. They will be able to have some of that information before a vote, and as Brian mentioned, we do have opportunities for a public hearing, for public comment, for the public to weigh in on these issues as well. So thank you for the question. Anyone else, anything to add? Okay, next question. What have been trends for enrollment in public versus private schools in the district? And what is being done to encourage neighborhood families to send their kids to public school instead of charter or private schools?
I'll just say, of course, we know now versus 10, 15 years ago, the number of charter schools has obviously increased in our city. Private schools, we have a lot in Salt Lake County of various sizes, some very big, some very, very, very small. We see over the last 10 years, and for any of you that have lived here for 10 years or longer in Salt Lake City, cost of living and buying a home or renting a home in Salt Lake City has gone up a lot. It's gone up a whole lot. And where we see families that had 2 or 3 students in our schools, they're moving to Harriman or West Valley or Davis County. We see that kind of movement. We see people that are moving in that maybe don't have any children or only have one child instead of a couple. So we do know that there's a lot of new building going on. A lot of the new building, though, has really been tailored towards studio, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartment units. There are some 3 mixed in, some townhomes, but not near enough to make up for the number that we're losing there. So a bigger factor that we've seen so far has been just that one of the first ones I showed up there is we have fewer residents under the age of 18 now, percentage-wise, than we have in the past. And it costs a lot more to live in Salt Lake City now than it used to. We are still drawing students from out of bounds, from Granite District, from Jordan District, from around. So we'll need to really focus on the efforts to continue to have those students come and bring more. But the reality is, we just don't have as many 5 to 12-year-olds now. Our fastest growing segment right now in our city is 45-year-olds and up. Percentage-wise, that's where most of our growth is happening right now as a city. So yes, we are aware of those factors. We are looking at those numbers and looking at those trends. COVID has kind of skewed things a bit, but we are working on that as part of our deeper study and deeper dive into our numbers.
Thanks, Brian. And as far as what we're doing to encourage families to attend our schools, as many of you may know, we have a new superintendent, Dr. Elizabeth Grant, who has been wonderful to have in our district so far. She recently completed her first 100 days in the district, and for those of you who enjoy tuning into our board meetings, you may have heard her give an update last night on a few things she's observed while she's been here and the direction that she wants to take our district. What she wants to do is she wants to make Salt Lake City School District the flagship school district in our state, to make sure that we are leading in terms of growth and opportunity for our students and in terms of equity and improving the already high caliber of education that we offer. Our district has more national board certified teachers than any district in the state, and that's not per capita, that's just raw numbers. We're not the largest district in the state. We have some of the best teachers in the state and the best qualified teachers in the state. The quality of our academic programs is also right up there. And one of the purposes of this boundary study is to make sure that these great programs are able to be accessible by as many students as possible, no matter where in the city they live. So those are some of the things that we're working on. We're working on things even beyond the elementary school level. Dr. Grant has a vision for us in creating career pathways and college pathways to make sure that we're meeting the needs of students, no matter what grade level they're in our district. So again, thank you for that question. The next question, how much money needs to be saved, and is the mood to be gradual or rather more aggressive in school closures? Pros and cons.
So the fixed costs at our average elementary is about $680,000. That includes utilities, administration, and other fixed costs for a building. So technically, if you close a school, then that's the savings. Teachers are not considered in that. They're not considered overhead because, in theory, teachers will follow the students to wherever they go. Some of the costs will be gradual. Some of them will be immediate as we're no longer heating or cooling a building.
Thank you. Oh, got it. Thank you for adding that clarifying question. For the YouTube stream and for our translator, I'll just repeat that. The person who asked the question was just clarifying that what they meant was whether there's appetite to close a lot of schools at once and kind of get this over with, or if we're going to do this gradually. So our policy actually says that this is a process, at least the process of reviewing student enrollment data and population data for the city, that this is to be an annual process in line with what other districts along the Wasatch Front do, where they look at this every year, every 2 years, and that will help to avoid a situation where we have to close a large number of schools all at once. So I'm not sure if that quite gets what you're looking at, but the idea is for us moving forward to stay on top of this data, to really know what those population trends are so we can course correct along the way rather than having to make really big changes that impact families across the city in really big ways. So thank you for that question. Our next question, I will read it in Spanish because it was written in Spanish, and I'll translate it in English, and we'll go from there. So this question says, las escuelas bilingües van a tener suficiente espacio para todos los niños de la escuela Mary W. Jackson? Will all of our bilingual schools have enough space for all of the students from Mary W. Jackson Elementary? So I'm going to try to answer this question in Spanish first. Si entiendo bien la pregunta y me pueden clarificar si no la estoy entendiendo bien, la pregunta es sobre si los estudiantes que participan en el programa de inmersión bilingüe en Mary W. Jackson, si van a tener plaza en otro lugar en un programa similar si la escuela cierra. La respuesta es sí. Si una escuela que tiene un programa especial en el distrito cierra, vamos a tener ese programa en otra escuela. So I think what the question is getting at, and I asked the person to clarify if I'm getting this wrong, is what if in a hypothetical scenario where Mary W. Jackson, which is one of our Spanish dual language immersion schools, if that school were to close, would there be space for these students in that special district program at a different school? And the answer is yes. If a school that has a special district program in it were to close, then that program would be moved to a different school, and those students would absolutely maintain their place in that program and would be able to continue participating. Okay, another Spanish question. I'll do the same thing, root Spanish, English. Si se llegara a cerrar la escuela, ¿cuándo sería? En una reunión preguntaron por qué hay menos niños. Varias mamás han cambiado a sus hijos porque no quieren esperar el cierre cuando en realidad no saben si lo van a hacer. The question is, if our school were to close, when would that be? In a meeting, there was a question about this because a lot of families have changed their children's school because they don't want to wait to see if our school will close or stay open. So the first question, la primera pregunta, si llegara a cerrar la escuela, ¿cuándo sería? Sería para el próximo año. La decisión sería en enero. La Junta de Educación va a tomar un voto y vamos a usar la época de la primavera para fijar planes de transición durante la primavera y durante el verano, y cerraría la escuela para el próximo agosto del 2024. So if a school were to close, we would know that decision from the board in January of 2024. Then we would use the spring and summer period to really hone in the final details of transition planning, making sure that we're assimilating school communities together, bringing people together, and students and staff. And the closure would be for fall of 2024. So another great question. Anything else to add from the team? I'm sort of talking a lot right now. Okay, thanks. Thanks. How many of the elementary school students have moved to charter schools? So that's not data that I'm familiar with. I'm going to look to the team to see if anyone has an answer or if we even have a report on that.
So it is part of our further study. What we don't know, what we don't have as part of our data, when a student moves from, say, moves from Rose Park Elementary to Escalante, we know where that is because it's within district. And then we also know, if it's within district, we also know when we get a student from out of district that's coming in. If a student started in our district and then left, we don't have right there on the spot, on the nose of when they leave, why they left. Did they move to another state? Did they decide to go to a charter school, private school, home school? What we are getting, and part of the data that we're starting to harvest and really look at in this deeper study is the state charter schools also report their students and where those students were from. So what we're getting is data that says, okay, we know that within Salt Lake City's city limits, these students right here last year went to this charter school or this school. Problem is, it only comes up once a year, and we're coming up on that other one this year right now with the data that we're just collecting. So that's part of the reason why this data that we're doing, this deeper dive in September, October, is so crucial. We're going to take a look at that, but we don't just right now have the data for this past school year at our fingertips like we have from the others. Sam, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Thumbs up, we're good. Thanks, Brian. The next question, could schools be closed before the school year ends? My kinder student teacher quit today, her third teacher arrangement since the start of the school year. And then there's a second question, but I'll tackle this one first. If any schools are going to close, we will know that in January, and the closures would be for next fall, so starting August of 2024. So no, we're not closing schools before the year ends. The next question is, will the district continue with dual language immersion even if I have to drive to another school? This parent is from Mary W. Jackson Elementary, where we do have one of our Spanish dual language programs. The answer is yes, absolutely. If a school closes that has a district program, that program will be moved elsewhere, and that student will be able to attend that school and continue to participate in that program. Okay, next question. This is a great question. Will boundaries potentially be redrawn and result in students who are currently attending a school that doesn't close having to change to a different school? The answer is maybe. So we have 7 schools that are currently being studied for possible closure. Once we have an idea of which schools might be recommended for closure, then any schools at the elementary level that remain open could be impacted by a school boundary change. As Brian explained earlier, the extent of the impact of those boundary changes will depend on the number of schools that might close. But it is possible, I see this parent is from Dilworth Elementary, it is possible that Dilworth Elementary, which is not on the study list for possible closure, might see some different school boundaries. So we're glad to see parents coming from schools that are outside of that list of 7, because yes, there might be an impact in that way. And we've mentioned this a couple times, but there also might be programs that are hosted in some schools that remain open that might move to a different school, even though that school on the study list stayed open. So thanks for the question. Okay, next question. Oh, yes, absolutely.
I would not love to. Hi, I'm Christina. I just wanted to clarify a few things. Like, if you've previously been attending a school and your boundary changes, you will still have the option of, if your school is still open, of attending the school that you were previously at. So I can't think of 2 schools that are together because I'm standing up here under the lights and it's very disconcerting, but let's just say, I don't know, School A, School A and School B. If School A is your neighborhood school and what you were attending, but somehow the boundaries are redrawn so that you are now supposed to attend School B, you will still have the option to attend School A and finish out the K6 or K5, whatever level that school goes to. So you will have that option. We will also ensure that we open up a new school choice window so that if you aren't happy with wherever your boundaries have been drawn in attending that school, that you will have options to apply for open enrollment to another school.
Thank you, very important. Did I hear Logan had something to add too? No? Okay, thank you so much. That was really important info. Okay, next question. Are the schools not currently being evaluated for closure 100% safe / guaranteed not to be impacted? Is there any chance that there will be changes to the list of schools on the chopping block? Is the list set in stone? Okay, so a couple of questions here. Is there any chance that there will be changes to the list of schools being studied for closure? No, that is the list. So if any schools do close throughout this process, they will be among the 7 schools that are on that list. So for example, the last parent was from Dilworth. Dilworth would not be a school that would be impacted by closure. The first question was whether schools that are not being evaluated for closure will not be impacted, and I think we answered that in the previous question, but it is possible that some of those schools might see boundary changes or changes to programs that may be currently hosted at those schools. So the impact will be broader than just the schools that will be closing, and I think we answered those. Thank you. Anything else, team? For those on your team analyzing and collecting data, what qualifications do people on your team have in, I think this is structuring and analyzing data? What is being done to ensure data used is absent of bias, or how are biases in data collection accounted for? Some very good questions too. So the team that is analyzing and collecting data are people who are educational experts. We introduced a few of them today, and you got to hear a little bit about their areas of professional expertise. We have people with advanced degrees, with doctorates, with years of educational experience, with classroom experience, with experience as school administrators, and experience in other leadership positions. We have people on our team who have been in the district for long enough that they remember the last round of school closure, so drawing on some lessons learned there historically. So the people who are evaluating the data and looking at these important pieces of information are people who are knowledgeable and qualified, and are working hard to make sure that we have the best interests of our students, that we really are trying to live up to that charge of excellence and equity for every student, every classroom, every day. The person asking the question added some clarifying. Our superintendent wants to say something, but just for the YouTube stream and for our translator, I'll repeat the question. The question was asking about specifically not just the educational qualifications of the team, but of their expertise in analyzing data. Superintendent.
So most of the data that we're collecting is rather simple. We're not doing regressions on the data. We're not doing sophisticated statistical analysis of the data. We are capturing data on enrollment. We're capturing data on quality of the building and the learning environment. We're capturing those kinds of numbers that we then are making judgments about in this holistic analysis of what is best for the district. So we actually don't need data scientists to do that kind of work, but rather trying to balance the quantitative measures, which are the numbers and the data bits, with the information we've gathered from families, from our community, as well as our understanding of the buildings and the programs in those buildings.
Thank you, Dr. Grant. I see more questions, so I'm just going to grab that quickly. Oh, thank you, Jason. Okay. Our next question says, would school consolidations provide opportunities for creating new programs at the remaining schools, such as additional language immersion programs? For instance, the closest German immersion program is an hour away, with the one in Tooele being considered for closure. How likely is it for more programs like this to be added when schools are being closed? I am going to turn to Dr. Hall for help on this question.
Thanks. I love this question because I think anybody who's heard me.
Dr. Hall, will you come up
Speak.
to here? Thank you. Just for the YouTube, thank
Okay,
you.
that's as far
One-
up as
one-
I'm going
one
to go.
more.
I'm not going up one more.
Okay.
Okay, but next time I'm wearing sneakers. This is a great question, and if you've heard me speak before, you know that I am probably one of the state's biggest proponents of dual language immersion programs in the state. And I love the idea of being able to bring more programs like that, as well as a lot of the programs that we are looking, including one here at Northwest, that really encourage STEM activities in science, technology, engineering, and math. And one of the things that has always been a bit of a concern when we go to address adding programs like this to a school is the size of the school, because a dual immersion program, for instance, needs to be large enough to support 2 tracks of students or two sets of classrooms at a grade level for the dual immersion program, and then preferably 2 classrooms at the grade level for the English only side of the program. So it is our hope, as we continue to move toward a goal of being able to be that flagship program, that flagship district in the state, that our programs will reflect that, and that we'll be able to consolidate our resources and really be able to respond to the needs and the wants of the community around specialized programs for students in all different kinds of areas. So I'm hopeful that that will really be something that we'll be able to continue to expand and extend. Thanks.
Sorry. I blame Sam. Just kidding, I don't. Thank you, Dr. Hall. Okay, this next question says, if we have actual questions that we would like discussion on and follow up on, who do we talk to ask? So whoever wrote this question, you are welcome to talk to any one of us after this meeting ends. We'll be hanging up here at the front. So if you have a specific question that would be easier, kind of one-on-one, we are happy to answer those. So thank you for the question. Next question, why was money spent to put solar panels on a school that was then considered for closure? I will turn to our business administrator for help on that one.
So the decision to put solar panels was made prior to any list that was approved on school closures. So that's the reason why, I mean, one set of decisions was made prior to a second set of decisions.
Thank you. I will also point out that while we are in the process of school closures, for example, if there were a repair needed in a building, our obligation is still to provide our students the best educational environments we can, so we would still spend money on a school that might be on the closure list. Just want to make sure that you know that we are committed to continuing to serve our students even during this process. Okay, our next question. When responding about how data is used, it was said data will not be applied consistently. Does data matter in the process, or is data being cherry-picked to support decisions already made? So data is important in the process. Data is what is informing what a final recommendation may look like. And I don't believe that it was said that data will not be applied consistently, but I'm going to turn to the team for any additional thoughts on this data question.
I'm guessing that that's partly in response to what I had said earlier, so I don't know if I am the best person, if any of the rest of you have things to add to this, other than it's not about using data consistently, it's about the question that I recall was about how weighted, are they going to be weighted evenly, I think is how it was put. I think Dr. Grant spoke well toward this, and it goes into the big picture that when we look at a school, it isn't just one or two aspects that make a school. We have to weigh in things that are judgment calls and things that are different people's perspectives. And we can say, hey, here's a school with 220 neighborhood students. Here's a school with 300 neighborhood students. You could talk to different people and they'd say both numbers are adequate for neighborhood students. Another one would say 300 makes sense, 220 doesn't. Somebody else might say neither of them have enough neighborhood students. So it's in relationship to what we have and what we're shooting for in our district. What we're trying to get is a robust neighborhood population at our schools, which we know is ideally 3 teachers per grade level. We know we're not going to hit that at every single school. We're not going to draw boundaries so that they stretch 4 miles one way or another in order to get that at a school, but we are going to get closer to that. We're going to work toward our ideal of being able to offer a robust neighborhood population, because when we do that, parents and students have choice within their school. When we do that, we're also able to get teachers collaborating in effective, efficient ways. By doing that too, we're making efficient, effective, more efficient and effective use of our taxpayer dollars. So the pieces that play into that, obviously we need to consider closing schools. We have to make a recommendation. The only wrong answer to any of this is for us to just keep on doing what we're doing and not do anything. We've lost over 3,500 elementary students, 3,800 elementary students in 8 years. We need to do something. And so with that, it isn't just looking at numbers and clicking them off. It's in comparison to other schools in their area. It's what the needs of the district are as a whole too. So yes, data is very important, but it isn't the be-all end-all. A number on a chart isn't going to tell us everything we need to know.
Thanks, Brian. We are down to our last 3 questions. If you have any more, feel free to bring them up. If not, we'll just call these our last 3 questions. This next question says, have those board members making these decisions spent time in the schools and neighborhoods on the list? Have they observed for themselves the traffic, sunlight direction in the mornings, etc.? It feels what I see daily would change some minds. I personally can't speak to the experience of every board member, but what I do know is that what you just shared, that's why these comment forms are so important. That's why sharing your input with the board will matter. We can look at data, we can analyze information from the city and from other state agencies, but this public input is critical because there are certain things that we won't know unless you tell us what those are. So I encourage you, if you haven't filled out that comment form, to make sure that you are sharing these specific things, that you identify which school your student attends, and some of the impacts that you foresee, knowing your neighborhood much better than all of us might.
I would just like to add meetings with city planners, meetings with UDOT, meetings with a crossing guard supervisor for the city, because that doesn't come under our district. That's a city-run program. Those meetings and summaries of those notes that people like me and some of the other district leaders who are involved in those meetings are taking, our board will see those summaries. They'll see that information. I can think of some recent data that I was just getting summarized in order to give to the board about 3rd North, 6th, 7th North, and 10th North. And the speed limits, the number of multi-lane roads on those different roads, the different traffic calming strategies that are being put in place on some roads and not on other roads. Those are the kind of things we are going to be sharing with the board through this process, as well as we have district leaders that every week do drive to our schools and look at the communities around, watch it at when school first starts, watch it when school is closing, watch it during the day. So our district leaders are also out in the community itself, seeing some of it firsthand, but a lot of it is the data that we collect off things like new traffic calming strategies that are being used on some of the different roads that we have, that example I gave. So yes, the board will be seeing that. Even if the board isn't part of those meetings, they'll see the minutes from those.
Thank you, Ryan. And I do want to add how much our board members care about their schools and know their schools and their school communities. They know the buildings, they participate in school events, they attend programs, so they do know what a lot of these needs are. But again, the public comment is so important for them to hear from you what the impacts might be for your specific situation. This next question, I will pull in Isaac for his help. The question is, how does the district explain the fact that buildings of similar age are in such vastly different condition? Why has the district apparently not maintained Wasatch Elementary at the same level as Ensign Elementary? This is clear from the McKinstry report.
So the schools, every year there is a facilities capital plan meeting that my predecessor would do with the principal of each school. They'd walk through, identify what the issues were, see what the needs were, and then they would come back to the district and say, okay, here are the needs, this is what we have to spend, what are the priorities, and that they would take the necessary steps to do that. From my looking at it, there hasn't been a disproportionate amount of money going to one school versus another school. There may be a different total dollar amount, but when you look at the different things that have the needs and the costs put towards those have not been put off or ignored.
Thank you, Isaac. Now we're down to our last question. It's a 2-part question, or I guess rather 2 questions. What are the plans for the schools being closed down for the actual building? So I'll tackle this one and then I'll read the second question. The plans are to be determined. When there's a building that is, a school that is closed, for example, the district continues to own that building. We can evaluate and see what district needs might be and repurpose a building for a different purpose. One example, we still own the property for Roslyn Heights Elementary, which was closed about 20 years ago. That property is in the process right now of being turned into athletic fields to accommodate our student athletes in the district. The board has approved new sports for our student athletes in recent years, and we are in need of additional field space for them, so that property will help us to serve that student function, that student need. As other needs come up, the properties that are in our ownership may serve other district purposes. In the event that a building were to be sold, just for the public's awareness, the city does have first right of refusal. I'm going to look to our team here for any additional information that needs to be added to this question. Okay, thanks. I'm perfect. Thank you. This is our last question. How much in advance will the final decision be publicized? And I'm going to look to our superintendent for assistance on this one.
So the Board of Education will make the final decision the way the timeline is set out now. We have public comment periods in November. In December, the district is planning to prepare a recommendation that would be put to the board. That would happen by December. And then the board will continue to take public comment and then make the final vote in a board meeting probably in in January. That's the timing of this. So there will be time for the public to see the recommendations, both on the schools that will close, as well as the boundaries that are being proposed for the new consolidated schools.
Thank you, Superintendent. And thank you to all of you who have come out tonight. Yes. Do you have a paper for me? Oh. Okay, sure. Here, actually, I'll have you speak it. Well, we're streaming on YouTube, so the audio will be better. Thank you.
So my question is, with schools being closed and having more students at other schools, will there be a bigger opportunity for after-school program? Because like my little brother, it takes him forever to even get accepted to be an after-school program. So then I'm constantly either getting off work early, his dad has to finish doing whatever he's doing, or like pause and go and pick him up, figure out who's taking care of him, or my mom just will get off work early. And I know a lot of parents go through that. And so my question is, will you guys do something about it to have more opportunities for after-school program?
Thank you. And I will add that you're not the first person who's asked us this, as we've been reviewing public comment that's been submitted. Other families have asked about this as well. I don't have a definite answer for you right now because we are still in this further study process, but I do want you to know that it is an issue that we're looking at, that we're aware of, and have even had conversations with our city about what programs are available, to know how close in proximity they are to our schools. I'm going to turn to the team if there's additional information. Okay, but know that that is something that we're looking at, and that we're aware is a priority for our community. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, so the only thing I would add is that it has come up as part of that transition group, and we're going to do our best to better serve our after school needs for students as well. So thank you for bringing it up. We've heard it, and we know that it's something we need to start addressing.
Thank you. And now that was our last question. Thank you again for being with us on this late Wednesday night. We have 2 more meetings if you're interested in joining us again. The one on Saturday at Franklin Elementary will be live streamed in Spanish, but if you don't speak Spanish, we will have English translation available. So don't be scared away by that. And thank you again for being with us tonight.